welcome to yet another edition of the Stacks and Stacks podcast, where today we're going over UFC Vegas 26. We have Waterson versus Rodriguez. We believe they're still trying to work on the main event just days before. We're coming off yet another successful week. We're on a heater, folks. So we're looking to go ahead and we'll continue the streak. But I do want to remind you, all the official picks and bets are posted to the Stats and Stacks podcast over on Instagram and over on Twitter. So if you're trying to make money, make sure you go ahead and you follow me on those platforms. Otherwise, I'm not going to waste your time. Let's get started. Again, we have the first fight of the night. We have Christian Aguilera, a plus 125 underdog, going against UFC debut fighter here in Carlson Harris at minus 155. We have the over sitting at 1.5. It's at minus 167. And then we have the under at plus 137 with this fight. And we'll start with Aguilera. When it comes to Christian, I don't think he's that good, to be 100% honest with you. He's kind of just a power puncher. His record is appropriate for the way he fights. It's kind of a 50-50 crash shoot in regards to what you're going to get. He has decent stand-up, not a lot of kicks or anything, just honestly just a straight boxer. And he does pack a punch, don't get me wrong. It's just his ground game's a little shaky. You don't see it much, and when you do, he doesn't fare too well down there. His takedown defense is also a little shaky. And his UFC stats will say one thing, but in regards to like including the regional scene, doing some fight tape, I did see him getting taken down by regional guys quite a bit. So he's primarily just a boxer in the UFC is really all this guy is, with just a little bit of power there. And then you go over to the flip side. We have the debuting Carlson Harris. He's the complete opposite of Christian. He's actually a wrestler primarily. You look at all of his fights, all he's doing is taking everyone down. I know when you look at his record, he has a plethora of KOs. Some of those are ground and pound, and a lot of those are just he wrestles so much, he kind of wears you down and then finishes you on the feet. I saw those in his win against Alex Santos and Claudio Rocha. He has a few wins over some decent guys. Like Carl Booth is pretty good, even though he's still on the regional scene. Wellington Turman's currently in the UFC. He ran through him. He has a few wins on here, to be 100% honest with you, of UFC caliber talent. Because he's good, man. To be honest, he is a welterweight version of Corey Anderson. He has a little bit of a suspect chin, but he's great wrestler, wear you down, can hold his own on the feet, just doesn't want to get hit because he doesn't know if the lights will go out. But great endurance, great wrestling, just grind on you. It's not going to be the most exciting fight, I'll tell you that. The only way it's exciting is a quick finish for Christian. But Carlson's not stupid. He knows he has a clear wrestling advantage. He knows the danger that Christian has on the feet. So I don't think he's even going to play with that. I think he's going to go straight to the fence. And don't forget, this is going to be in the small cage here. So it should be easier to close the distance and go ahead and get that shot, go ahead and take him down. So at that point, even though he's a debuting fighter and I don't like to do it, there's a difference when they're giving you a reasonable line here with him at minus 155. So what I would do, in all honesty, the pick is going to be Harris. And when it comes to betting it, again, right now he's minus 155. The over, if he wins, it's going to go a little longer than 1.5 rounds. So at that point, the over is at minus 167. So they're really close. So come fight time, contingent on which way the line moves is the way I'm going to go. I'll either take the over or I'll take Harris, whichever has the better odds when the fight kicks off. Then the next fight of the night, we have Tafon Nchukwi going up against Jung Young Park. We have Tafon coming in at minus 145 favorite. And then we have Jung Young Park coming back with plus 115. The over-under is interesting. They have it set at 2.5. They have the over 2.5 at minus 130. And then they have the under 2.5 at even money. So we can start with Tafon. There's not really much to write home with about him. He's a Contender Series guy. Came in, if you're reading it correctly, 5-0. Not a ton of fights here, but it's just the way he looks, his intimidating demeanor, just Dana White could not wait to get this guy in the UFC. So he didn't care that he didn't have the experience. He went and he got this guy before someone else did. And he's green, man. You look at it, he's not the greatest tools. He really does rely on his power. I mean, you look at William Knight is a good win there. I watched that fight. It was a little bit of an early stoppage, in my opinion, but he was winning, so nothing you can say there. It was no fault of his own. But look, round 2 KO, round 1 KO, round 1 KO, round 2 KO. And then the big story was coming into the Jamie Pickett fight. Jamie Pickett's durable. He's tough to put out. What happens when you take this guy into the third round and drag him into deep waters? He was fine. In all honesty, no one expected it. It was his first fight at 185. Everyone thought that would drain him a little bit. No, he was perfectly fine. I wouldn't say he has low volume, but he doesn't have high volume. He's very strategic in his shots, but he does throw out a little more than you would think. I know everyone calls him like the middleweight Francis, little mini Francis. And that's the way he fights. He doesn't necessarily have the deft touch like Francis does, but it's damn near close. And then you had the comeback on Jung Young Park. And his is a different story. I do respect Park's fight IQ. He's primarily a boxer, but if you look at his last 2 wins against John Phillips and Marc-Andre Barrio, he's going out there and he's taking guys down. And he's just overall developing his MMA game. He looks good. I mean, his loss to Anthony Fernandez is fine. I think Fluffy's really good. I love watching Fluffy fight. So that's not a bad loss there. But the problem are his wins. Like, I don't know any of these guys he's beating on the regional scene, and their records aren't anything to write home about. 1-0, 2-1, 4-4, 6-4. Like, he lost a split to some of those 6-4, 2-1, 1-2. You see what I mean? Like, it's not like he's fighting the best competition there, but he's doing what he's supposed to outside of this loss. And then you look at when he actually takes a step up and he gets choked out, and then he beats 2 of the worst middleweights in the UFC. And he does so because he knows they have no takedown defense. I love the fact that his fight IQ is high enough to know I'm a boxer, but anyone can take these guys down, so it's an easy win. I want to support that so badly. It's just going up against Mini Francis, I just don't know if he has enough to get the job done, because he has very, very good takedown defense. And when you look at Park's takedown offense, it's a little skewed with these last 2 fights here, considering they can't do anything. My thing is, Park is very, very durable. He's never been knocked out. So at that point, you could either take, I'll say the pick is still Njoku, especially at minus 145 odds. If he goes out there and finishes Park, you'll never see that again. He'll always be upwards of minus 200. So I'll go ahead and I'll take Tafon as the pick. For the official bet, in all honesty, the fact that it's set at 2.5 kind of frightens me. But it is slightly better odds to just take the over. Again, Park has never been finished, and Tafon went to a decision his last fight at middleweight. So again, the same scenario as the first fight. Whichever odds are better between just going Tafon straight up or picking the over is the one I'm going to ultimately go with. Then the next fight is a very interesting one I'm really, really torn on. We have Ryan Benoit as the favorite, minus 150, against Zaruk Adashev, coming back at plus 120. The over is set at 2.5, mainly because they're flyweights. Always going to be a high over under. And then the 2.5 is at minus 202. The under 2.5 is at plus 162, which is very interesting. We can start with Ryan Benoit. He's also not really anyone to write home about. As you see, his record is 10-7. He's one of these guys that trade wins and losses over and over and over until recently. He's on a little bit of a slump here. He lost to Tim Elliott. He lost to Alatang. He lost. I mean, those guys are good. So it's not that he's going out there and losing to scrubs, but he just can't get the job done. Then you see him alternating wins and losses. With Shakin, with Brandon Moreno, with Freddie Serrano, with Ben. The Sergio Pettis fight, he was getting pieced up. He was getting torn apart, and then he caught him. So I don't know much to think. Otherwise, he would have. If he didn't catch him with that lucky punch, he would have been on a 3-fight losing streak there. So he's just one. The Anthony Burchak loss is very concerning. It's just he loves to alternate wins and losses. Weird thing is he's a high school state wrestling champion, and doesn't shoot takedowns at all. He doesn't use his grappling whatsoever. He's one of these wrestlers that fell in love with the hands and their power, and he packed some serious heat, especially at 125. And his stand-up's okay; it's pretty good. The problem is he just becomes one-dimensional for whatever reason, and for whatever reason, he doesn't have the best takedown defense. I don't understand when that was your background coming into the sport, how you can have bad takedown defense, but and not use his grappling at all. I mean, when it comes to the ground game, not much to write home about either. I know he likes to go for like leg locks, but again, it's very seldom that you actually see people get those. So, I mean, he goes for some of the hardest submissions to get. He's just a weird cat, man. I generally like to fade Ryan Benoit. Only problem is he's going against Zaruk, and Zaruk. Yes, the record is correct when you look at it. He is 3-3. He is one of these guys that was traditionally like a kickboxer. He's a glory kickboxer, and then he made the transition over into MMA real late in his career. I mean, his losses. Sumajiri is good. That dude is on the rise. If you don't know the name, you better recognize. So there's not really there's no shame there. And he's at it was a decision. It's not like he went out there and got finished real quickly, like in the Tyson Nam fight. But I give him no sweat for that. In all honesty, he took the fight on like a week's notice, up a weight class. I mean, why not just try to get into the UFC? It's one of these COVID cases where they need someone to step up. And you had that time where you had a lot of people that were not UFC caliber getting in just because they could pass a COVID test. He's example number one. And he did step up a weight class in a week's notice. I have no shame there in those two losses. He did what he had to over in Bellator. So, I mean, in all honesty, he's a really, really good kickboxer. He just doesn't have a lot of experience, and he's very one-dimensional. The problem is, in this fight, Benoit, again, the grappler, wants to be a boxer. So if he tries to make this a stand-up fight, I think Zaruk could piece him up for upwards of 3 rounds. So it's a matter of Benoit has the better overall MMA game, but it's a matter of if he wants to choose to use it or not. So what I'll do is the pick will be Benoit just because he has more tools in the shed. The bet itself, I guess Benoit's not bad value at minus 150. I totally see why people are taking Zaruk, and he's actually gotten steamed down to plus 120. This line keeps moving in his favor, and I get it. You could take a shot on the dog. What I would probably do if I'm going to take a shot is take the under plus 162. If they're going to stand and bang, I mean, I've seen Zaruk get knocked out before. I've seen Benoit get finished. So at that juncture, I mean, you might as well just shoot for the stars and get plus 162 if you're going for some sort of Hail Mary play. And this is one I would not bet whatsoever. If I'm betting it, I guess I'll trust Benoit to use the tools that he's supposed to do. Otherwise, you know what? No, screw it. We'll go the under. Go plus 162. Don't bet it unless, you're feeling good that day. But if you're going to go for it, just fucking go for it. All right. We got the next fight. We have Mike Trezano versus Ludwig Klein. We have Ludwig Klein at the minus 255 favorite. And then we have Mike Trezano come back at plus 195. The last time I checked this morning, it was upwards of 200. So we'll start with the over-under, is over 2.5 is minus 115 and under 2.5 is minus 115. So Vegas was kind of torn there. We'll start with Trezano. And yeah, if he looks a little familiar or something like that, it's because you haven't seen him in 2 years. 2 years ago, you saw him fight none other than Grant Dawson and get worked. I mean, the stand-up, they were pretty even on the feet. And everyone's like, oh, Grant Dawson is so good. It's nice that he was holding his own on the feet. Grant Dawson can't strike. So the fact that it was even on the feet is actually concerning. That's not a good thing. That's a bad thing. And the moment it hit the ground, Grant Dawson destroyed him and tapped him out easily. The fight before that was the split decision win over Luis Pena, who I also think is a little overrated. I love Luis Pena, but as a fighter, he's not the greatest in all honesty. And then you'll see the Joe fight. Yes, and when it says Ultimate Fighter season 27, he won the Ultimate Fighter. I don't know how. That's how weak the lightweights were that division, or sorry, that season of the undefeated. But Mike Trezano was undefeated and won the Ultimate Fighter show. He blew out his knee after the Grant Dawson fight, and that's why you haven't seen him. That was 2 years ago, so May of 2019 exactly. That's concerning, especially someone he only has 9 pro fights. He didn't look the greatest, in my opinion, in his last fight. Again, you can say it was 50-50 on the feet with Grant, but that's not a good thing. Grant cannot strike. So in my opinion, that wasn't a great performance. In all the fights I saw him, he looked a little shaky. He has good training partners. He's training over with like Shane Burrows and such, which I like. I don't like the freaking mullet he has going right now. I can't support that mullet. I'll tell you straight up, I'm not betting on a man with a mullet. That being said, we have to come back on Klein here. He only has 1 fight in the UFC, and it was that just utter destruction of Shane Young. A head kick and punches in 1 minute and 16 seconds. Now, mind you have to be cognizant of the fact that the Shane Young fight, he did come in weighing 150. It was a featherweight fight, so he missed weight pretty badly. One of those cuts where he knew he wasn't going to make it, so he didn't drain his body. He just said, screw it, I'm just going to make the 150 limit so that they allow me to fight. So, I mean, that part is a little concerning, in all honesty. He's got to make sure, we got to see him on the scale, make sure he's doing his weight cut right. If he comes in with dead eyes, I'm not betting on a man at the mullet. I'll probably just stay away from the fight or bet the under. But I mean, you look at his regional scene wins. The thing is, I don't recognize a lot of these names, in all honesty. But the promotion he was fighting for, some of these promotions are good ones that you can, when it comes to that scene. I mean, he's fighting decent competition. I don't know the guys, but again, I stand by everyone saying that when it comes to regional scenes, he is fighting at some of the best ones over in the Czech Republic. I'll take their word for it. And it sure did show against Shane Young fight. Shane Young does not just go out there and get finished in a minute. That is not normal. That's not how this generally happens. All of his losses were to like Volkanovski and all these other like former champions. So for Klein to come in and starch him in literally a minute really says a lot. His stand-up's phenomenal. His power is unquestionable. His takedown defense is very good. His ground game's suspect, but he has such good takedown defense and such great stand-up that he just kind of just pops back up. Even if you do get him down, he's one of those guys that scrambles right back to their feet. So you never know what their ground game's going to be like because they don't stay down there on the ground. So the pick itself is definitely going to be Klein. And then when it comes to the bet, again, minus 255 aren't the best odds. And Mike Trezano has never been knocked out. He's only been subbed. I could still see like a club or sub or something like that. So I was looking at the over, but I don't like minus 115 at enough value. I'm one of those guys that like seeing the plus in front of it, or I'm just going to take the chalk. In this instance, I am going to take the chalk. Give me Klein at minus 255. And that's one of the biggest locks. So he's definitely parlay material if you want a little extra value in there. Then the next fight is a pretty interesting one. Another one where I'm torn on. We have Phil Hawes as the dog, even money against Kyle Dawkis at minus 130. We have the over 2.5 at plus 132, and we have the under 2.5 at minus 162. We'll start with the man himself, Phil Hawes. Again, his biggest claim to fame, he had the hardest road to the UFC that honestly I've ever seen. He was one that used to train with John Jones and always claimed that he would give work to John Jones in the practice room over at Jackson Wink. And John kind of agreed to an extent. On John's season of The Ultimate Fighter, he was hyping him up, telling him there's no way he doesn't win the show. Now, granted, the show was at 205. Phil Hawes came out there and lost right away. And he lost to the eventual winner of that season, Andrew Sanchez. So it's not like it's the worst loss. It wasn't a bad opponent. It was up a weight class. So he kind of, I'll give him a pass there, but the UFC wasn't buying the hype after what they saw. So he had to go over to World Series of Fighting. He fought there a few times. And then Dana White finally gave him a chance on the Contender Series. He went from Ultimate Fighter to Contender Series and then got head kicked to hell by Julian Marquez. Again, not the worst loss, but again, Julian, I don't think is the greatest either. He's okay, he's decent. So then he has to go back to Bellator, go back to the regional scene, and then he gets another chance at the Dana White Contender Series. This time capitalizes, knocks someone out in a minute, and then they finally allow him into the UFC. So, I mean, this man went from regional scene to Ultimate Fighter to regional scene to Dana White Contender Series to Bellator to Contender Series to UFC. Like, that's insane, but I do respect the fact that he kept at it until he finally got there. And he's on a roll right now. I mean, he's on a 6-fight win streak. He's on a 2-fight win streak in the UFC. And right now, the biggest thing is you look at his wins. He's a wrestler, really great wrestler. Wrestled with the likes of Colby and John Jones and stuff in college. Like, he's a very good wrestler. And he has heat in his hands, man. He hits hard, and it shows. Look, round one finish, round one finish, round one finish. All of these are in round one, round two. He comes out hot to start the round, and then you see him fade, and then you see him lose. That was his routine. He'd either finish you early, or if you took him into deep waters, you can kind of take him out. Until the last fight, he won his first ever fight by decision against Nasruddin. I know a lot of people are saying they thought Nasruddin won, how it should have been a draw, the way Phil looked the last round. In all honesty, watching the fight, rewatching it, I thought Phil did enough to win the decision there. It wasn't the most exciting fight. He just hung on for dear life, took him down, and just kind of laid and prayed. But sometimes you got to do what you got to do. He knew what the strategy was to win, and he executed. And if you're willing to be boring just to get the win, I trust you with my money. That's telling you that you have a good fight IQ. On the flip side, you have the favorite with Kyle Dawkis, and I think a lot of his favorite status is just coming off of his last name, because his older brother Chris is tearing up the heavyweight division right now. But little brother Kyle's good too. He has a really, really good ground game. I think he has 10 wins, and 8 of them are by submission. So he's kind of dangerous on the ground. His stand-up is a work in progress, but his last fight, he said he really wanted to show it off. And we saw it. I mean, it wasn't the best. It's definitely gotten better. Even from the Brendan Allen fight to the Dustin Stolfus fight, you saw a difference in the stand-up. So he wasn't lying. He is working on it. It is getting better. It's still not where I want it to be. Still not enough to kind of play with fire with Phil Hawes on the feet. But the thing is, I don't think he can take down Phil Hawes. And I don't think he wants to stand with Phil Hawes. And when you look at it, you're like, well, if it touches the ground, Phil Hawes can't take him down because he'll tap him out. That's a lie. That's not true. Yes, 8 out of his 10 wins are by submission. But when you really look at them, Darce choke, rear naked, Darce, rear naked. You know what you have to do in order to get a Darce choke or get a rear naked choke? Be in control on the ground. You have to be on top. And I think it's one of those sketchy things where he's a hammer on top, but that doesn't mean he's going to get tapped out, or sorry, that doesn't mean he's going to tap you out off his back. I don't know if that's true. In all honesty, it's not like Phil Hawes' record. You see him getting armbarred all the time because he does go for takedowns. He's a natural wrestler. And if other people aren't tapping him out, I have to see it. I have to see it off your back first for me to be intimidated with you on the ground. This is a reoccurring theme. People get scared of people's ground games, but it's always them on top. And Dawkis is just kind of physically weak. He's just not fully developed, or for whatever reason. I mean, he's 28, so he probably should be by now. He's my age. But at the same time, it's just Phil Hawes is a boss of a man, and I think Phil is going to dictate where this fight goes. So it's really a matter of, one, if Phil can kind of just starch him and take him out early, or 2, if Phil can win 2 rounds. Dawkis is going to have to win 2 rounds. He's definitely going to win the third. It's a matter of what goes down in that second round, because Phil's going to win the first. Dawkis is going to win the third. What happens in the second is going to determine the fight. So if you're giving me that close of a fight, I am going to go ahead and I'm going to take Phil Hawes. A lot of people are taking Dawkis. But I'm a contrarian on this one. I believe in Phil. And in all honesty, if I'm going to bet it, betting Phil is not terrible. It's even. But if you really think that it's Phil early or Dawkis by sub, you can always do the under. The under 2.5 is -162. Then the over is +132. You know what? Forget it. We're going to do a lateral. We're going to go ahead and we're just going to go Hawes for the pick, Hawes for the bet. I'm on Phil Hawes train, baby. All right. Then the next fight is one that I could give two shits about, but it's on the card for whatever reason. We have Ben Rothwell going up against Philippe Lenz. Rothwell at -115, Lenz at -115. The over 2.5 at -172, under at +142. And there's a reason this is aligned as a pick 'em. It's just solely on the fact that Ben Rothwell, what to say about Big Ben? When you see him and you see his when you see him, he is not an intimidating figure. And then you see his record and you're like, oh my gosh, how did he's 38-13. And you see some of the wins against knocking out Alistair Overeem, Brandon Vera, Matt Mitrione, Josh Barnett. He's going out there finishing these guys. You're like, okay, he's not that bad. All his losses are to like Andre Arlovski and Cain Velasquez. There's no problem with that. There is a problem. And the fact that he was on the juice. And post Juice Ben, 38-year-old, how old is he? I believe he's 30. Oh, he's 39. Okay, so post Juice Ben, who's about to turn 40 in the next few months, does not look the same. You can totally see the difference between Ben on the sauce and Ben off the sauce. He's not bad anywhere. He's decent on the feet. He's decent on the ground. I don't really see much of his wrestling. He just kind of ends up on the ground somehow. But the problem is his volume. He doesn't throw. It didn't matter before when he was in the back shooting up. He could go out there and he'd knock you out when he lands some punches. Now that you're not going out and he's only throwing 10 punches around, it's just not. Literally his last fight, he had 40 punches. He had 40 strikes landed. Like over a 15-minute period, that means you are literally throwing like 10 around. That's not going to cut it. It's not. I understand he has to conserve the gas tank considering he's about 40 years old, but that's not going to win you a fight. And he says it himself. I just got to let my hands go. But if you are aware of the situation and you're still doing it, it's very, very concerning to me. But on the flip side, you have Philippe Lenz, who is also the definition of overrated. He's 14-5. He came into the UFC, it was like 14-3 or 14-2. He's a light heavyweight, whether he likes it or not. He started off at light heavyweight. He's getting wins at light heavyweight. And then he had a knee injury. And then he got knocked out twice. And he's like, oh boy, I'm going up to heavyweight. I think it's because I'm cutting all this weight. It's messing with my chin. And you know what? He went over to PFL and had the easiest run I've ever seen in my life. Jared Rochelle was cut by the UFC. Al Salar, whoever this is god awful. Believe me, don't believe the record. He's that bad. Josh Copeland is god awful. He just literally, it's like PFL just kind of gifted him. They called him up and said, hey, do you want $1 million real quick to go in this tournament? Because the guys he fought were nowhere near UFC caliber. They're all regional scene caliber, except for Jared, but Jared's not UFC caliber. So then he gets exposed. He comes over to the UFC. He's a millionaire. He's like, all right, I'm going to go to the big dogs. And he loses to Andre Arlovski. He was a big favorite in that fight. Everyone was believing the heavyweight hype, and Andre kind of humbled him a little bit. And the concerning one is Tanner Boser. Tanner Boser is not a power puncher by any means. In all honesty, this is going to be one of Tanner's only finishes. I know he finished like Pessoa. He has a few finishes, but they're very, very seldomly does Tanner Boser go out there and knock you out, especially in the first round. So his chin, I don't think it had anything to do with him being at light heavyweight and cutting weight like he thought in 2017. I think it's his chin in general. He can't be trusted. He doesn't throw a ton of volume either, but he throws a hell of a lot more than Ben. So, I mean, the pick, I guess, would be Lenz just because I can't trust 40-year-old non-steroid Ben, but at the same time, I don't want to bet either one of these. Don't bet this fight. If you feel the absolute need to, I would just take the over. I know it's getting juiced up to almost -200, so hop on it early if you're going to do it. I don't really see either one of them going out and knocking each other out earlier than. And heavyweight fight set at 2.5 is very, very unusual, and it's because of this circumstance. So if I would not bet the fight, I would pick Lenz, but if you absolutely have to, I'd probably just bet the over and eat the chalk. At that point, we have one of the fights of the night here, and another tough one for us. We have Amanda Rebus, the favorite, minus 190, going up against Angela Hill, come back at plus 150 for Hill. We have the over 2.5 at minus 225, and the under 2.5 at plus 175. We'll start with Rebus. And the thing with Rebus is everyone's saying that she has a suspect chin. She can't take a punch. Like, guys, she's been knocked out one time in her career. That is a definition of recency bias. And Marina Rodriguez, we'll talk about her in a little bit. She hits pretty hard. It's not like she's an absolute killer, but for this weight class at 115, she hit pretty freaking hard for a 115 for a straw weight. And you look at Rebus and say she has a weak schedule. I mean, she got tapped out by Polyana Viana in Jungle Fight. Polyana's in the UFC, and she's decent. She's a black belt. I mean, she got caught. You look at some of these other ones, I don't know who these girls are, but she's out there finishing them out in round 1, round 2. Like, she's finishing these people. Emily Whitmire in the UFC in her debut, she choked her out easily. It's a win over Mackenzie Dern. Now, that's an impressive win right now, and it's not like that was years ago. That was 2 years ago. It was a year and a half ago. Mackenzie Dern is knocking on the door of a title fight. So to go out there and dominate her is pretty impressive. Ron Demarco, same thing. She might be a gatekeeper. She might be the definition. Like, if you look up gatekeeper, it just shows Ron Demarco's freaking face. But at the same time, that means she's UFC caliber. She's been there forever. She ran through her easily. Paige Van Zandt should have never been in the UFC. She was just there for her looks. And Rebus was quick to send her out. First round armbar. And then you have the knockout by Rodriguez. So I think people need to relax with the she has no chin. She's literally been knocked out one time, just her last fight. She's a good wrestler. I wouldn't say great, but a good wrestler. She has a good ground game. I wouldn't say great, but it's a very good ground game. And the striking offense is there. Her striking defense is not good. She's there to get hit. She'll hit you, but she's there to get hit back. Which brings us to why we're so torn on this fight. Because then you have Hill. And Hill, she's so much better than her record shows. She's one of these girls that will fight anyone and everyone. She doesn't sit back and pick and choose who she's fighting. You ask her to fight someone, she agrees. She's fought the best of the best. Yeah, she's 13-9, but she lost to Michelle Waterson, who's very, very good. And honestly, that split was I was 50-50 on it, could have went either way. Claudia Gadelia, I thought she beat. I don't know how she lost that split. She even dropped her at one point. She tore up Luma. We just saw Luma last week and how good she is, and she absolutely destroyed her. Hannah Cyphers is trash, and she went out there and did what she was supposed to do. She beat Cara Lisi, who we just saw 2 weeks ago, and stopped her. I know it was a doctor's cut, but she was dominating that fight. She lost to Yan, and Yan's very good. She's a 1 win away from a title shot. She beat Jody Esquibel. She's not really UFC caliber. She lost to Ronda Marquez. Now, that's the concerning one. I'm looking at it. I know it was back in 2019, but she got armbarred. And when you look at Angela Hill herself, the first thing you think of is her stand-up, because her stand-up's very, very good. Honestly, I would probably say top 3 in the division on the feet. Angela Hill is a beast on the feet. The problem is she doesn't have a lot of power, and she has 0 ground game. Her takedown defense initially, that's how you would win. You would take her down, and you would lay and pray on top of her, and you could just kind of handle her down there. She knows that's a weak spot of her game, and she's been working on it. And right now it shows her at like 70% takedown defense. Originally it was down at like 30%. So she's working hard. She's a lot harder to take down now. She's doing what she has to do. She's smart. And she's so good on the feet. She is going to piece up Rebus if this thing stays on the feet. Rebus, again, I said, is a good wrestler, so she wants to take it to the ground. She likes to stand a little and then use that to go in for a shot and take you down. So this is your traditional wrestler versus striker. In that instance, I'll always go with the wrestler, and I'll lean with Vegas, with Rebus. I'll pick her to win the fight. But there's a difference between who you think is going to win and who you're going to place your money on. Angela Hill, like I said, had a weak spot and is working on it. And you see the improvements day in and day out. And you're giving her a plus 150 odds. I can't pass that up. That's not usual for Angela Hill. So I think Rebus has more tools to win. But if I'm putting my money on it, I'm betting Hill. And Hill might be one of the best dogs on the card to an extent. if you're going to bet Hill, and I wouldn't look the other way. Then the next fight's another weird. This is a good card. No one's realized how sneaky good this is because the names aren't huge, but the talent is. We have Diego Ferreira going up against my boy from Western New York, Gregor Gillespie. We have Ferreira as the plus 145 dog. And then we have Gregor Gillespie at minus 185. The over 2.5 is minus 182. Under 2.5 at plus 147. We'll start with Diego. Diego, he is pretty good striking. He's one of these guys that's a BJJ guy. So he really doesn't care if you take him down because he's comfortable on the ground. So he's really loose, really fluid on the feet because he has nothing to fear. If you take him down, he's comfortable. So his stand-up, you see the improvement day in and day out. It's getting very, very good. He has wins. I mean, if you beat the GOAT and Anthony Pettis, that's impressive. Anthony just wasn't mentally there for that fight. That's the only reason he'll ever lose. So we'll move on. He beat Rustum. He beat Kyle Nelson, Jared Gordon. I mean, you're looking at the wins. He's beating UFC caliber people. He has a problem taking a step up. And the problem is his last loss and his last fight was to Neal. It says split. It was not a split. Neal clearly won. 2 out of the 3 rounds. But the problem is Neal is a step up and he lost. DP, I mean, that's probably one of the best lightweights right now in the division. So there's no shame in going out there and getting killed by DP. And then Neal again. So like he has 3 losses and he lost to 2 of the top 5 guys. But all of his wins are against people that aren't even really in the UFC anymore. So what do you do with him? Does he have a problem with a step up in competition, or does he have a problem with the top 5 in the division? I honestly have no idea. The problem with him is he's old, man. He's like 36, 37. He's getting up there. But it's not like Gregor's any sort of spring chicken himself. You look at Gregor Gillespie, he's 34, so he'll only be like 2 or 3 years younger. Again, from Western New York, great wrestling. Honestly, now that Khabib is gone, he might be the best wrestler in this weight class, or honestly in the UFC. Like if it wasn't for Jordan Burroughs, this dude would be like an Olympic champ. This guy is that good when it comes to wrestling. Again, and he was undefeated. He finally came off his first loss, and that's to Kevin Lee. I think he is another one that was kind of falling in love with the striking a little bit. You see the improvement, and he knows Kevin Lee is a wrestler, so he wanted to kind of test his striking against another wrestler, and he was looking fine. In all honesty, I know you look at the loss, and you're like, oh, he got kicked to shit. It wasn't really like that. The true story of the fight, I know it was only 2.5 minutes long, but Kevin Lee's face was already pieced up. Gregor was landing some really, really good shots before Kevin Lee decided he didn't like getting hit and tried to kill a man in the octagon. That head kick knockout was rough. And you want to say he definitely needs to take some time off. And he did. That was in 2019, end of 2019. So I think he took the appropriate amount of time off. Took 1.5 years off before he comes back. I mean, Gregor is literally doing everything right. And he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt, so he can take you down and finish it. He's not going to finish Diego, I'll tell you that. Diego's ground game is that good. He is not going to finish Diego on the ground. But Diego doesn't have the best takedown defense. So he can take him down if he wants to. It's just a matter of, does he want to strike with the jiu-jitsu guy, or does he want to take him down and kind of play with the fire? In all honesty, the pick is definitely going to be Gregor. I got to trust my boy. And in reference to wrestlers versus submission guys, wrestlers usually prevail. In all honesty, all you have to do is be safe. It's not like you're going out there and your goal is to go take them down and tap them out. You're not going to be able to do so, but it's a lot easier to be on top and stay safe. You have to watch for a few things, mind your P's and Q's, and you should be fine. And on the feet, I think it's split 50-50. So if he's not winning in the stand-up, he can always decide to take him down and then just try to play safe. He just has more ways to win. So I would it's another one of these with Gregor being minus 185. The over is minus 182. Gregor is not going to finish Diego. And I don't see Gregor going out there and just getting knocked out again. That was an anomaly. So at that point, I'd probably say to take either Gregor or the over. They're kind of lined the exact same thing right now. So whichever one is Whichever one is the better value come fight time, I definitely check that. But definitely Gregor or the over, and I will actually bet on one of those. It's a pretty close to a lock there. Bias aside, and believe me, there are no locks on this next fight. Maurice Green against Marcos Rogerio de Lima. I don't know how either of these guys are still in the UFC. We have Maurice at plus 160. Marcos Rogerio de Lima at minus 205. It's big boy time, so they have the over under set at 1.5. Over 1.5 is plus 115. Under 1.5 is minus 145. Not a lot to say about this fight, in all honesty. De Lima is a light heavyweight. He just decided one day he does not want to cut weight anymore. Even in the UFC, he originally was fighting at light heavyweight, but he wasn't doing the best. Said, screw it. If I'm going to lose, I'm going to be able to eat cheeseburgers as I do it, because he's one-dimensional. He's a black belt. He's very good on the ground, but he can't wrestle. And he's one of these guys that fell in love with the strike. And why? Because he has power. And he has all of these first-round knockouts. And he's like, well, that's a lot of effort to cut all this weight and to try to take someone down and tap him out. I'm just going to swing for the fences. He has terrible technique. He's very, very hittable. He just leaves his chin out there. And, I mean, as a jiu-jitsu guy, I mean, he got tapped out by Stefan Struve. He got forearm choked by Romanov. I mean, his last fight. That's embarrassing. Like, that's the first time that's ever happened in the UFC. It's a very, very rare submission. And it's really just a matter of exhaustion. This dude has one of the worst gas tanks I've ever seen. He has a round to finish you, or you're going to beat this man, literally. The problem is he hits like a fucking truck. So it's very likely that he can go out there and finish you. And that's why it's lined at 1.5 for the over under. That's why this guy is a minus 200 favorite, because they expect him to go out there and just handle his business. But his cardio won't matter. His black belt won't matter. His weight class won't matter as long as he catches Maurice Green's chin. And you know what? A lot of people do. Maurice Green, for being a kickboxer, think would have a little bit better stand-up, but he just doesn't. He's hittable, man. Like, you see him making improvements. He's doing the right thing. He's switching camps. Like, he's doing everything he can. He's trying. He's just not naturally talented enough to really make a dent in the heavyweight division, in my opinion, in the UFC. He'd be okay at Bellator or PFL or something like that. UFC, he's not ready. I mean, he got knocked out by Greg Hardy. That's a red flag. Lexi Olenek armbarred him. He got knocked out by Pavlovich. And John Vellante, he was losing that fight. Got dropped badly. They probably should have stopped the fight. And that's the thing with him. He does not have a good chin. A lot of people say, oh, well, no, Green has a pretty good chin. He does not. It's a very bad chin. He has good recovery. So if you knock him down, he doesn't just lay out and kind of call it a quits. He fights to get his consciousness back and do whatever he can to prolong the fight. He's good at that. I'll give him that. The problem is he shouldn't be getting dropped in the first place. Like, that's the problem I have. And again, Rogerio hits like a truck. So if he finds that chin, some trouble. Maurice doesn't have the best gas tank either. It's better than Rogerio's, but he's got 2 rounds in him. Rogerio has 1. So if you're looking at this fight, man, what I would really be looking at is either Rogerio. I'd probably do a prop of De Lima in the first round. Get a little better value than minus 200, or I'd take Green. In all honesty, because again, if he doesn't put him out in the first round, Green is most likely going to win this fight. So the pick itself, honestly, I'll probably go Green just because of the recovery. Hopefully he's able to be a wonder boy, and after he gets dropped, because he will, be able to recover, have De Lima punch himself out, and then Green just go ahead and come back and finish up the job. And the bet, honestly, again, wouldn't bet this fight. But if you're kind of deep in the card now, if you're feeling yourself, you have some extra change in your pocket, take the shot on Green. I mean, plus 160 dog going against someone with no gas tank, that's too much value. So if you're ahead already, or you really need to hit big, Green's probably the pick you're going to have to go with. It's just too much value at that point. And again, another really close fight here. We have Neal Magni at plus 160, just like Green, going up against Jeff Neal at minus 205. Over 2.5 is minus 155. Under 2.5 at plus 125. And this is one that has me completely torn. The reason being that is because they're in Vegas. It's the small cage. So is a small cage going to benefit the wrestler and help them get the takedown, close the distance? Or is it going to benefit someone like Jeff Neal, who just has a ton of punching power, and there's nowhere for Neal Magni to run? He has to stay in the pocket with Jeff Neal in the smaller cage. So it's a very, very interesting effect here. The cage is going to make a major difference. Jeff Neal, I mean, you look at his losses, they're not bad. Stephen Thompson, Kevin Holland, Martin Sano, I have no idea who that is, but that's super early in his career. It's 2013. So, I mean, we're talking 8 years ago. Jeff Neal's good, man. And I was looking at it, trying to see how many wrestlers he was fighting. Bilal can wrestle a little bit. He had no problem with Bilal. Mike Perry can wrestle a little bit. He had no problem starching Mike Perry. You have Frank Camacho can wrestle a little bit. No problem finishing him in the second round. So, I mean, he's fought some wrestlers. They're not to the level of Neal Magni, but they were decent enough. And the crazy thing is he has a 92% takedown defense. So if he can stuff these takedowns, Jeff Neal's stand-up is 10 times better than Neal Magni's. Neal Magni is actually getting older and slower. You can kind of see him regressing a little bit. Neal, you see him getting better and better every fight. I know he just recently quit his job like a year or two ago and is training full time for the first time. He's taking this thing seriously, and his power is stand up, his performance, it's showing. So then you have the flip side with Neal. Neal's a good wrestler. He's okay on the ground. He's okay standing. He's pretty well-rounded. He's a generalist, but a really, really good wrestler. Problem being, again, he's just regressing. It's not his fault. He's 33. He's been in wars. The thing is, his age says 33, but then you also have to look at the amount of fights he's had, man. He's had like 32 fights, and he's taking them back to back. He's doing the Cowboy approach. I think he had like 5 fights in 1 year, like 2 years ago, and it's just starting to wear on him. His last fight got grapple fucked by Michael Chiesa. I mean, there's not really much to write home about that. That's never happened to him before. Generally, how he loses is power punchers. Santiago Ponzinibbio knocked him out in the 4th round. RDA, again, took him down and choked him out. Lorenz Larkin just leg kicked him to hell and then knocked him out. Damian Maia tapped him out. You kind of have a theme here. Like, either if someone's a better wrestler than him, they'll take him down and be able to tap him out. Or he runs into just a brick shit house and gets knocked the fuck out. Literally, that's all that happens. And that's what Jeff Neal is. So again, I don't know if the smaller cage is going to help him to where he can get the takedown and kind of neutralize Neal's power, or if it's going to completely screw him over where he's forced to stay in the pocket with Neal and get blasted yet again. So the pick, I will go with Jeff Neal, just because I with that 92% takedown accuracy, we're going to see if it's real or not. And if he can stuff those takedowns, Neal Magni is in some serious trouble and will not get finished, or will not finish the fight. So what I would say, you can either take Neal by knockout just to get a little bit of value. If it's not much more value, in all honesty, I'd probably just go ahead and take the dog and bet Neal Magni and hope that the cage helps him get the takedown. So pick is Jeff Neal. Sorry, there's Neals everywhere. So pick is Jeff Neal. The bet is either Jeff Neal by KO or Neal Magni just straight up at plus 160. Whichever way you guys want to feel about what's happening this fight. Is it power or is it wrestling? Which one's going to take over? You got to make the judgment. I'm going to decide after weigh-ins and then see which way I want to lean. But it's going to be one of those two options. And then we have a very, very interesting occurrence here. We have Donald Cowboy Cerrone, who was scheduled to just dismantle and make Diego Sanchez retire. Obviously, all this stuff happened with Diego where he's no longer with the UFC, and in steps Alex Morona. And the crazy thing is, when this was originally lined, we had Cerrone at minus 130. He's now a minus 170 favorite. We have Alex Morona at plus 135. The over is at 2.5. Over 2.5 is minus 202. Under 2.5 is plus 162. And it's an interesting fight, man. You look at Donald Cerrone, and you say he's older, he's on the backswing, he should probably retire. He is old. He is on the backswing. He probably should retire soon. He's 38. But at the same time, you have to look at his record. I mean, you look at Anthony Pettis, the GOAT, no shame losing to the GOAT. And it was a close fight. It was super close. Conor McGregor, I mean, he shouldn't have been in that circumstance to begin with. Justin Gaethje and Tony Ferguson, again, some of the top 10 in the lightweight division. Leon Edwards about to fight for a title. Darren Till just fought for a title and is about to fight for one another weight class. Robbie Lawler, former champion. Jorge Masvidal just fought for a title twice. RDA, former champion. Anthony Pettis, GOAT. Nate Diaz, we all know Nate Diaz. Benson Henderson was for the title, and Jamie Varner. Those are his losses. So he's literally only lost to people in his entire career. This man has been fighting since, 2006. And the only losses he has are to champions and championship and people that fought for a title in his entire tenure. Like, that's crazy. That's how good this guy is. So, I mean, at that juncture, you look at it and you go, are those losses that bad? Then you look at the last fight, Nico Price, the no contest. He lost that fight. Nico Price lost a point, which made it a draw. Cowboy lost that fight. The problem is you look at the competition right now is Alex Morona, and you look at the killers he was dealing with. Cowboy's a generalist. He's really good on the feet. He's sneaky good on the ground. He's very good on the ground, and no one gives him credit for that. His wrestling is there, man. It's not the best, but it's not bad by any means. It's there. And then you have Alex Morona, who I think is one of the most overrated fighters in the UFC. Like, yes, he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and his technique when it hits the ground is really good. It's just he's been in the UFC since, let's see here, it's been a minute. He's been in the UFC since 2016. He is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, okay? Ask me how many takedowns he shot. He literally shot his very first takedown ever in the UFC against Reese McKee in 2020. It took this man 4 years to shoot a takedown. If you are a black belt, what the hell have you been doing? And he's been falling in love with the stand. That's what he's been doing. And it was working to an extent. I mean, Max Griffin is a good win. Kenan Song sucks. Zach Otto sucks. Chaos Williams knocked him out in 20 seconds. Anthony Pettis gave him the work. Yeah, Anthony Pettis is beating everyone. He's the GOAT. So, I mean, at that juncture, it's just not working out the way it's supposed to work. So, I think coming off of this chaos knockout in 20 seconds, that just utter annihilation, he shot his first takedown because he was scared. He's just like, I didn't like that feeling of just getting tore up. So it inspired him to shoot a takedown. And you know what? He did it his next fight against Anthony Pettis. But I saw why he's not shooting takedowns. You look back at his last fight against Pettis, you're like, oh, well, he was on his back the whole time and took him down. No, Pettis threw a kick and slipped, and Morona jumped on top of him. He did not take him down. He shot takedowns in the second and third round and didn't get them. And Anthony Pettis doesn't have the greatest takedown defense, so he can't shoot. There's a reason he's not taking anyone down, because he can't. So you're telling me it's going to be a stand-up fight against Cerrone, against Morona. Morona's not a super big power puncher, and he's kind of slow. And in all honesty, I agree with the line. Even at the minus 170, I wish I would have hopped on it earlier for Cowboy at minus 130. I mean, and Morono's gas tank is very suspect. It's not good at all. He always slows down. So even if Cerrone's 38-year-old stature kind of makes him slow down, I haven't seen it really. But if it decides to kick in this fight, Morono's going to be just as gassed. And Morono's taking it on a week's notice. So if you have someone that has traditionally bad cardio taking a fight against someone with good cardio on a week's notice in a stand-up fight where you're a jiu-jitsu guy, there's just too many factors. So the pick is going to be my boy Cowboy. The bet, you can either do Cowboy or you can do the over. Over is a little steamed, but if money keeps coming in on Cowboy, it's getting closer. But right now, I would say the pick is Cowboy. The bet is Cowboy, and I hope he rides off into the sunset after this. Get your win. and then go ahead and call it a great career. This dude's a Hall of Famer. Love Cowboy, but he needs to hang him up. He's 38. So that takes us to the main event of the evening. We have the karate hottie Michelle Waterson at plus 170. We have Marina Rodriguez at minus 220. Over, it's a strawweight women. It's actually a flyweight women's fight. Both of these women are taking the fight on short notice, and that's very, very important. We have the over set at 4.5 and the under set at 4.5, minus 240 for the over, plus 190 for the under. And this is probably the trickiest fight of the night on a betting standpoint, and I'll show you why. We'll start with the favorite, Rodriguez. Again, coming off that impressive win. Oh, there it is right there. I love it. That's the picture they use. Coming off that win over Amanda Rebus, where she just utterly annihilated her. Don't get me wrong. She was on her back a lot the first round, where Rebus was able to take her down, kind of control the first round. It was split 50-50 on who that won that first round. But that second round, she decided she didn't want to get taken down anymore and just blasted her in the first minute of the second round. Before that, she lost to Esparza. I know Esparza's on a little bit of a career resurgence right now. One last run to the title, probably a fight away again against John. But at the same time, it's really just that fight was very, very close. It could have went either way. Obviously, you see that with it being a split decision. It's just Marina's ground game, man. She has no ground game, and her takedown defense is not where it should be. That's the only thing holding her back. If she had good takedown defense, she'd be undefeated. Same thing happened with Calvillo here. A lot of takedowns resulting in the draw. No one really knew how to judge it. I mean, she has some good wins. Jessica Aguilar, Tisha Torres, obviously Rebus earlier. A lot of, for a strawweight, a lot of knockouts. I mean, round one, round two earlier, round two. Like, it's not usual that you see a bunch of knockouts at this weight class. Now, her stand-up is good, man. It's honestly top 5 in the division. It's scary. It's very, very good. And in all honesty, the only thing holding her back are twofold. She has her cardio, which is questionable, and her takedown defense is bad. It's just straight up bad. She's a really big girl for the weight class. So I don't know if she's just cutting too much weight, or if you're that big, it should be tougher for them to take you down. I know it's easier when you're short and stout to take down someone that's real tall and lanky, but she's got to figure something out because she could honestly go out there, almost be champion if she could figure out her takedown defense. And speaking of which, we have the karate hottie, and yeah, she's a karate expert. That's why that's her nickname. The problem is, I shouldn't say a problem. The thing is, recently she's been doing a whole bunch of wrestling because she has a good game plan, man. She's one of these fighters that knows what she has to do. We talked about Angela Hill earlier, how the method of beating her was to just take her down. The split, again, was 50-50. Michelle can hold her own on her feet. It's not like she gets hit a ton, but she can sneak in a takedown or two, and she did against Hill, and that's what ultimately won her the split. She lost to Carla Esparza, again, on this career resurgence. I don't know what got into Carla, but I respect it. She's doing her thing. And that was Carla's the best wrestler in the division, and she's just squeaking out these wins via wrestling. Joanna's concerning because I know Joanna might be one of the best at that weight class ever, but she pieced her up for a long time. I believe that was a 5-round fight. It was a main event. She pieced her up for a long time. Michelle was not in that fight. And to me, Marina kind of has the same body type as Joanna. So that's a little concerning. She also lost to Tisha Torres on the feet. Rose Namajunas tore her up and then choked her out. It's just, outside of Tisha, who was just probably just too quick, Tisha's fast as hell. I don't think she could keep up with Tisha. But you look at Rose, you look at Joanna, these are these really long and lanky fighters. They have a really good jab and can kind of counteract that karate style. Michelle uses a lot of movement. And when you're just that tall and that lanky, have that reach, you can still reach her as she's circling. And that's just a common theme I saw while doing some fight tape there. She's hittable. Usually she's in and out movement with her karate style. She's really good at it. But when you have that big of a reach, when she's on her way out, you can still reach her. And Rodriguez is that lanky. So then you're really depending on Michelle to go out there and put on a wrestling clinic. And she's a karate expert. So I love the fact that Michelle's well-rounded. She's better on the ground. She's a better wrestler. And she can hold her own on the feet. So the pick is definitely going to be Rodriguez. The bet It's tricky because Michelle Waterson's sitting at plus 170. And we've seen her go 5 rounds on multiple occasions. I mean, even just her last fight was 5 rounds. And her cardio checked out. Marina's isn't. It's questionable. We don't know. She slows down in 3-round fights. So what is she going to look like in a 5-round fight? My biggest concern is that this is a short notice fight. So you would think that favors Waterson, but Waterson's small. She could be an atomweight. If the UFC had a 105-pound division, she could make it. She's definitely one of these tweeners where she could fight at either weight class, but she'd probably be best suited at 105. And Rodriguez is cutting a lot of weight to get down to 115. So that's a less weight cut for Rodriguez at 125, which might help her in all honesty. Oh gosh. So Michelle has more ways to win, but I just see Rodriguez piecing her up. So the pick is going to be Rodriguez. The bet, I'll either take the under at plus money at plus 190. That's a lot of time. That's 4.5 rounds for Rodriguez to either catch Waterson or Waterson to tap her out on the ground. That's a hell of a lot of time. So I'll probably take the under or bet the Karate Hottie straight up. I don't see go the under. In all honesty, I'd probably hope for one of the two. You have 2 chances there. And at that point, again, I wouldn't really bet this unless you had to. But if you're up on the night, this is the last fight of the night, and you're trying to put a little extra cash in your pocket, go ahead and bet the under on this fight. Otherwise, I'd advise to stay away from it. So in all honesty, looking at the card, they have 12 fights on the card here. I could see 9 to 10 underdogs winning. Like, this is going to be a crazy fight night. It's going to be a very, very tough one to bet. So make sure there's going to be a lot that goes into the weigh-ins tomorrow. It's going to decide a lot of these fights and which way we're going, how these people look with the catch weights and the extreme amount of time off and stuff like that. So make sure you follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram at Stats and Stats Podcast. I will go ahead and I will post the official bets every Saturday. I wait till after the weigh-ins, see who needs the box of shame, stuff like that. And they will be posted this Saturday morning. And then let's hope, this is a very, very tough card. Let's hope that we can come out on top yet again. Otherwise, I appreciate the love. And we'll see you on Saturday.